success has nothing to do with your emotional health, right? You can be, I mean, yeah, top of your game, top of your profession, and be a completely toxic, unhealthy, emotionally immature person because it doesn't require that. It requires you to work hard, go to class, get the A, take the test, pass the exams, right? None of that requires you to have a healthy personality,
Right.
right? So sometimes you look
Right.
up and you're like, how? But then sometimes you look up and you're like, how is this person in this position? How did
Right.
they get here? And they learn how to work the system, and maybe they're good at being soft or gentle with the right people, right? But their character with the people, how do you act with the people who quote unquote don't matter?
Welcome to the NEXCUE Mindset. I'm Stephen Garner, your host, a resilient life expert, and today I have the privilege and blessing to have a rich conversation with the one and only Dr. Bridgette Peteet, a licensed clinical psychologist, professor of psychology at Loma Linda University, and director of the Resilience and Disparities Lab, where she leads research focused on resilience, mental health, trauma, health disparities, and culturally responsive care for underserved communities, which I have come from. That's why I'm so happy to have her. Originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, Dr. Peteet earned her master's and doctoral degrees in clinical psychology from the University of Cincinnati before joining the faculty at Loma Linda University. Throughout her career, she has secured numerous research grants, published extensively, and received national recognition for her scholarship, mentorship, and commitment to improving the lives of marginalized populations. And she is intelligent. I know that firsthand. She is also the author of Dishonor Thy Mother. I love that title, how you did that little parentheses. Daughterhood, Dysfunction, and Deliverance, a thought provoking book that combines clinical expertise, psychological research, and personal experience to explore family dysfunction, healing, resilience, and the path toward emotional freedom. Today, we'll explore how childhood experiences, dysfunctional relationships, resilience, and emotional health shape our personal and professional lives, and how developing the right mindset can help us heal, grow, and thrive. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bridgette Peteet. Oh, thank you so much, Bridgette. I'm so excited today.
Thank you
Um,
for having me.
Nothing has changed. I still have the testosterone, or at least I think I do, of a 20-year-old man. At least I have the psychology of one. So, pray for me. This is really near and dear to me, and I really appreciate the contributions you've made in this area of expertise. And so I just want to ask you some questions and just have a dialogue with you so you can help all of us, including me, about dysfunction. And so what I'm trying to wrap my head around is, what makes relationships dysfunctional? You know, many people describe this is what I understand, okay? Many people describe relationships as toxic, unhealthy, or dysfunctional, but they don't really know the cause of it. We've all said it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it could be a lot of causes.
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's one thing. So it's probably why you hear different things. I think about, it could be someone's mental illness, it could be substance use, it could be something as simple as emotional immaturity. So there's a whole spectrum of things that could cause toxic and unhealthy relationships. There's no one right answer.
Yeah. So, are there misconceptions about dysfunctional relationships that concern you when you are engaging people or you hear people say things, whether it's the media or even in some of the circles you're involved in?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I struggle with is that everyone wants to call every human interaction that may be difficult or challenging, they want to call it toxic, right? Or dysfunctional. And I think we're overstating normal human interactions, normal human, disagreements or, personality clashes and things like that, and overstate it and make it something that's more pathological or, using the psych terms to make it more dramatic or, more serious than probably some of the interactions would call for. And so I think we have to be careful not to mislabel and misattribute the things that are just part of, two humans interacting or multiple humans interacting. Everything doesn't rise to the level of being toxic or dysfunctional or trauma, right? Some of it is just we're human beings, we're flawed, we make mistakes, we're having a bad day, we're talking a little about something a little bit different when we're talking about trauma and dysfunction. We're talking about patterns, we're talking about persistent, we're talking about things that don't change from day to day. And so I think that's the difference that people miss in this conversation.
Well, you just said some things that just freed me up. Like it's like we have to give each other a little more grace. What does it really mean to be human? Um,
Yeah.
can can two emotionally healthy people still have a dysfunctional relationship?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say no, because I think healthy people, there's certain elements of being a healthy person, right? So it is self-awareness, right? Controlling your emotions, being able to manage your emotions, and then also being attuned and aware of other people and how they're reacting and their emotions and trying to be conscious of that. And so I think if two people are in a place of both being healthy, you can have conflict, but it's not going to be dysfunction. Right. So you can have a disagreement. You can maybe not be on the same page. Maybe it's not a great fit, but it doesn't necessarily rise to the level of dysfunction. And I think that's because if you have certain characteristics that make for, someone who can, be aware, of themselves, who can sit with their moods and their emotions and, understand what to do with that. And both people are doing that. I don't think the relationship can ever be toxic, right? You may have moments. That doesn't mean you're not going to ever disagree or things are going to be perfect or, but I don't think that two emotionally healthy people are going to have a toxic relationship.
Oh, wow. It's good to hear you say that the conflict is a part of the journey
Mhm.
and it's okay. Like
Yes.
like that's reassuring because sometimes I can bring unnecessary conflict.
And how, I mean, but we all do, and how many people can say that they never, they're perfect every day. They're in a good mood every day. They never make mistakes. Like no one, and who in our lives, I think about, your friends, your family, your intimate partners, your coworkers, we all get on each other's nerves. So that's just part of everyday living, just how your mood is, you're not feeling well, all the things that are part of being human. I'm more so concerned when it's, extreme or it's, pathological or it's harmful. And those are the things I think people forget. Sometimes people want life to be this perfect, happy all the time, you know, um, no flaws type of life, and that's just not reality of how we are in this world. So,
It's just not reality. So now
mm-mm.
you make me think about the patterns. The pain patterns is what I call them. That's my little term today.
Okay,
Um,
okay,
so one of the most fascinating findings in psychology is that people often recreate familiar emotional environments. Like I'm always trying to push back the past. There are certain
yeah.
triggers I have when I go certain places. I try to tell people if I'm visiting a relative respectfully and they live in a certain environment, it's like, man, I have to prepare my mind because I can't. It really
It
starts to
takes you
trigger.
back.
It really triggers me. So,
Hmm.
why do people unconsciously repeat painful relationship patterns, though? That's where I find.
Yeah, because it's so deeply rooted in you, especially you're talking about your family of origin. That's where those patterns emerge. And I find myself doing the same thing. I'm a whole psychologist. I've talked about this. And I still do it. So for me, I'm still drawn to narcissistic people. Like sometimes I look up and I'm like, how did I end up in a friendship with this person who is
Oh man,
so
not you.
self-centered? I do, because part of me, I learned to deal with narcissism by being a helper. I mean, I became a psychologist after all, to serve my community, right? And so my love language and all those things, it's like being a helper, right? And so I think that people who are manipulative and want to take advantage of others, they are also drawn to that. And so sometimes I find myself in these relationships and I find myself making excuses for how they are, and oh, they have good side, they
Wow.
have a good side too, and then a couple years later, I'm like, what was I thinking? I'm like, it's so obvious, and I'm like, I heard myself and all the excuses, and I still got into that familiar, comfortable pattern of being the caretaker and letting people take from me, and sometimes people pleasing, and my muscles getting stronger. I think that's the thing that we can maybe say is that you don't have to keep necessarily reverting back to those old dynamics. It's like learning, oh, being aware of them, right? And standing in that. So sometimes I am on high alert and I'm like, oh, I can't be friends with that person because
Oh,
it's too fresh. And I'm high alert for the narcissist. And I'm like, nope, like yeah, we can't be friends. But then other times I think it's like when we're vulnerable, so for me, moving across the country and, then the pandemic hit, like I don't know anybody but the realtor, right? We were just here by ourselves for such a long
right.
time. And so it's like craving community, right? And so, whether it be your emotional vulnerability, maybe talking about mental health, depression, maybe your people make you feel good and you forget those other things, right? The new exciting relationship, as we know, always masks some of those like actual flaws in people.
Yeah.
Those rose-colored glasses is not just in, romantic partnerships. It's also in, our friendships. And I think sometimes we can be blind to those red flags early on, because we've been socialized for so long and when we're very young that this is what's normal and this is what relationships look like. And I think on some level for those of us who've had traumatic childhoods, that it's like it just stays with you, and it's very difficult almost to disentangle the roots, what came from where, and I find these blind spots even in all the work that I'm doing. A random blind spot will just pop up and I'm like, I should know. Why
Wow.
don't I know
That
this
is
at this
so
big
true.
age?
That is
Right.
so true. The blind spots. So that makes me ask this question. How much influence do childhood experiences have on adult relationships?
Ooh, I would say that's probably the biggest part.
Is it really?
I would say it's the biggest part because you learn about human relationships from day one, whether you're nurtured and loved and spoken into with kindness and gentleness or not, right? Um, and I think that shapes your expectations. It shapes what you think about family, how you all interact, whether or not you discuss things or is it sweeping things under the rug, how you engage with one another. Are you avoidant or are you aggressive? Are I think all of those things start very early. You learn them, with your parental relationships, with your cousins, with all of those early formative years where your brain is developing. And so you kind of get hardwired in a certain way growing up. And it's really difficult to kind of shut that off. And sometimes a good, healthy relationship can help you really see yourself and help you grow if you're willing, right?
If
I
you're
think
willing, right?
if you're willing, right? I think if you are also a parent, that's another like, ooh, right? Because you can really see so much more of, oh, this is what was going on when I was growing up, and whether I want to repeat the same thing, which is so much easier than not repeating it and figuring out what is the most healthy thing to do when I never saw that. So I don't even really know. I'm kind of making it up, and so I do think those early relationships are the biggest predictor of what your adult relationships are going to look like.
Wow. Man, that's enlightening. Um,
Yeah.
many people define themselves by how others treat them. I found that to be interesting in my research, I should say. How does our identity influence the relationships we tolerate?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that is a hard one because it depends. Right?
Yeah.
So if you are a healthy person who has been raised in a healthy environment, who has a stable sense of identity, strong self-esteem, appropriate confidence, you've been nurtured in all the right ways, I think it's a lot easier for you to not let other people define you. But if you are always been told who you are and never got to figure it out for yourself. If
Okay.
you were told something negative and that's influenced your self-esteem, those are the things that you might believe. And it's a lot more difficult to try to not let someone else influence how you think or what you think about yourself. Um, and some people don't know, they haven't spent that time in introspection and trying to figure out who they are. And so they find themselves flowing with whoever they're with, and their identity kind of becomes attached to whoever that primary person is in their life. And they never figure out, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, Runway Bride, where she doesn't even know like what kind of eggs she likes, and it's like whoever she's with, like, no, she loves scrambled eggs, no, she loves poached eggs, no, it's like
Oh
she doesn't even know
man.
what kind of eggs she likes because she just eats the eggs of whatever partner she's with because she doesn't have a sense of identity because she's never been single and she's never really explored her own preferences and her own boundaries and her own ideas. And so you're much more susceptible to being influenced by outsiders.
Can achievement become a substitute for emotional health?
Yes. The short answer is yes. Achievement can be a substitute for. I hurt a lot of people's feelings when I say that because I'm around high achieving people just because I'm in
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
academia.
know. I
My
know.
circles. That's just and I hurt people's feelings because I'm a victim of that too. And I tell people like, don't be impressed with my accolades. They're just a trauma response. It was like
Oh,
I
you
was
say
trying to
that?
be. It was yeah. I
Ooh,
was
that's
trying
a
to
man.
be
That's
perfect so that I could earn love, so that people would value me, so that people wouldn't, think poorly of me, right? And I wasn't necessarily doing it for myself. It was like to prove myself. And so, I did all the things. And, at the end, it was like, well, what is this? What does this mean? Who am I without all of these achievements? And I think that's a lot harder because our society values those achievements and accolades. And so you get reinforced not only maybe from your family, but the world. But who are you when all that's stripped away? Are you able to sit with yourself, look at yourself in the mirror? Are you a healthy individual, right? Are you emotionally healthy? Are you physically healthy? And I think we do mask a lot of our dysfunction with achievement. Yeah, it's interesting. I know I'm guilty.
oh yeah. I mean, this is beautiful, Bridget. So why can successful professionals still become emotionally dependent on unhealthy relationships?
Yeah, because I think the success has nothing to do with your emotional health, right? You can be, I mean, at top of your game, top of your profession, and be a completely toxic, unhealthy, emotionally immature person because it doesn't require that. It requires you to work hard, go to class, get the A, take the test, pass the exams, right? None of that requires you to have a healthy personality,
Right.
right? So sometimes you look
Right.
up and you're like, how? But then sometimes you look up and you're like, how is this person in this position? How did
Right.
they, how did they get here? And they learn how to work the system, and maybe they're good at being soft or gentle with the right people, right? But their character with the people who, how do you act with the people who quote unquote don't matter? You
Ooh,
know, um, I think that's a testament. How do they treat the server at the restaurant? You
right.
know, um, putting those achievements aside, like who are you and figuring that out. And sometimes that's uncomfortable because it's like, well, I don't need to explore the hard, ugly parts of myself because I can sit over here and rest on my credentials. But that's not, I think self-exploration and growth are a sign, of being psychologically healthy. And so I think if you want to be your best self, you want to optimize, to your, highest pinnacle, like I think you have to really, one, sometimes maybe think about what have been the themes and the feedback that you've been getting from people throughout your life. Why have your relationships ended? What kind of, situations and patterns have repeated themselves, right? Um, think about the things that irritate you, the things that bother you. Usually that's a clue of
That's a
some of the
clue.
things you're
Oh,
still
that's
struggling
good.
with.
I didn't. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, why is that sticking with me? And then, I think some people are very self-aware and that's great. And some people need the support of a therapist or a counselor or a pastor to help them find those blind spots. Because it's not always easy. Sometimes like we're like, okay, I made it this far in life, it's worked out, whatever. But I think putting as much work into your achievements the same amount of work should go into your human development, your psyche development, your health. And I think that's the balance, not doing one or the other too much, but having balance in life.
Mm. Man, that is so good, man. I mean, I love this kind of stuff. Many people intellectually know a relationship is unhealthy. They know it, yet they stay.
Yeah.
Why? I've always struggled with that.
Yeah. Well, say it's not easy to leave. It's painful. You gotta grieve. You gotta, it's not
Okay.
easy to just leave. I think then not only your own struggles with maybe abandonment, your own struggles with, avoiding discomfort in those awkward conversations. Sometimes it's reinforced from the outside. I see sometimes unhealthy relationships may be reinforce like, oh, well, he has a good job, if you're talking about a relationship or, they're a provider or, oh, the status or whatever that maybe comes with being with that person. There are a lot of other things beyond just like, oh, I'm gonna walk away. I'm done. It's and actually, I said sometimes I tell people like my cutoff game is strong. Like I sometimes
You said the cutoff game. I gotta
the
make a
cutoff game.
note of
Like
that. The cutoff. I'm
I'm
writing that
like
down.
once I hit that point, and it's like whatever your point may look different from my point, but once
Yeah.
I hit that point, like it's like I'm done, and I don't have like the same level of emotions about it that because it's like I've already sorted through and analyzed and compare and contrast and pros and cons, and I think too much. But you know me, so you know that that's one of my overthink things. So once I get to that point, it's like I have toiled with this
Mm,
and like I come to my decision. And so I'm very, you know, just sort of decisive about those kind of things once I get to that point. Um but that's something that I've practiced. And having good boundaries is something that I have, it's like a muscle, over time, it's something that I have had to develop. I used to be a people pleaser. Like whoever I was talking to, that's who I was going to agree with because I didn't want conflict. I didn't want anyone to dislike me, and now I'm like, I have to be okay with people not understanding me. They may not like me that, and I'm becoming more comfortable in that. And I think a lot of times people don't want to be the bad guy. They don't really know how to have a conversation that doesn't end up in conflict, right? So I think that's another skill that sometimes adults don't have. They think like everything has to be this blow up, knock down, drag out, confrontation. And I'm like, no, sometimes it's just matter of fact. Sometimes it's just, these are the facts of the situation and, wish you well, and it doesn't have to be this big thing, but I think we haven't really mastered the art of conflict doesn't have to be loud and aggressive and toxic, right? It can just be a fact. It's just the reality. We don't have to end relationships in this explosive, loud way. And say sometimes, I mean, I'm even the master of silent leaving. I'm like, I'm not even saying anything. You know what you've done, and I don't even like me explaining it to you. You're going to be defensive and deny, and I already can predict. Sorry, I'm a psychologist. I can already tell. I already know what you're going to do and say. So I'm just going to bypass all of that, and I'm going to you know, just exit like Homer Simpson in the bushes, just, back out of it. Like I don't know. And that's not the same as like sometimes people are conflict avoidant, that they're like, do anything to avoid conflict. So they tiptoe around, they don't speak up for themselves, they don't have good, that's not the same.
mhm.
Um, and so I just want to make that distinction that, it's but that takes practice too because it's not fun. It's not
That's
fun
not fun.
being in conflict with other people, and so you know it's just different. Respecting where other people are and how they um, handle getting out of their situation, how long it takes. Sometimes as a therapist, it's like, oh, girl, run. And I have to wait like 2 years until she's ready to run.
Oh,
Like
wow.
I can't give her the shortcut. It's her decision, it's her path, it's her journey. I do want to give her the cliff notes, like, hey. this is what's coming, but I have to wait for them to get there. So I think that same patience in our friendships and our loved ones that are going through things, it's like sometimes you have to sit with them and not push them into things that they're not ready for, that they haven't worked through, that they haven't processed, and that just takes a lot of patience.
Man, while you're talking, it's like healing me. Uh, can chronic stress change the way we perceive relationships?
Hmm. I think so because I mean I think one of the things that we see is that people will take out their stress on those that are around them.
Mm.
And I think if you're not dealing with the root cause of the stress, so wait, is the chronic stress the relationship or other? Let me back up.
Yeah, that's true too,
What is
right?
what is causing the kind of chronic stress, right? We have to figure that part out first. No, I think that it if we're not dealing with those stressors, think about how it affects our physical health, as we know, heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, all of those things. In the same way, it affects our mental health. So anxiety, depression, all and substance use, right? So how do we, when we're going through things, how are we coping? Are we engaging in unhealthy ways, taking it out on our children, taking it out on our partner or spouse? Um, and I think that a lot of times people maybe aren't aware of that they're stressed out or that it's become chronic because they're just so used to living in that state of carrying so much. And so I think really being attuned to yourself, I think is important. Where do you carry that stress? Like for me, I get like really tense in my shoulders, right? Am I getting sick? Right? Am I not doing things that I used to do? Am I just finding myself irritable? Do I have a scrunchy forehead all the time? Right. That, really being in tune with myself and recognizing my triggers. Like for me, I'm not a crier. So if I'm crying frequently, I'm like, oh yeah, something's definitely
Something
off,
definitely
but
right.
it's like, I know, but it's like, I know myself. If you cry all the time, maybe that's not a sign for you.
Yeah.
So really knowing yourself and what does that look like for you? And then what are you doing? What are the things that you're doing that may be, unhealthy, and are you taking that out in your interpersonal relationships, whether it be in your parenting, because I think children are the most vulnerable in those scenarios because they're a safer target, right? They have no power, they're smaller, and I think that contributes a lot to, when I talk about all the parenting and adverse childhood experiences, is those daily life stressors that become chronic for some people, and trying to parent when you have little reserves left is difficult. I mean,
Mm.
parenting difficult on a regular Tuesday, but but it's really difficult when you're under a lot of stress. And so we understand that, certain life stresses, whether it be financial, that's a big one, um, whether it's your relationship, like all those things impact, how you parent. And so we have to make sure we're taking care of ourselves so that we can better take care of our children.
Mm. Mm. Man, wow. Um, so I think I have had to ask you this. What are the common trauma responses that people make mistake for personality traits? Is really like you said something. I could tell you something about me.
Mhm.
I do not have immediate trust for men because my father was never in my life.
Mm,
So when a
yeah.
man tell me something he doesn't demonstrate, I don't trust you, bro. You're gonna have to
Yeah.
show and prove. That's just something I have
Yeah.
to overcome. But
Yeah.
it's not, but it doesn't mean it's a personality trait, right? I mean,
Right.
yeah. So what are
Yeah.
the, yeah, you see what I'm saying? Where I'm trying to go there. Yeah,
Yeah, I think we have to be careful though, because when you say personality trait, that means probably means something different to me
yeah,
than,
right, right.
yeah.
I don't
So
know.
like,
Educate me. Yeah, educate
no.
us. Educate us.
So I think about that persistent pattern of how you operate and move in the world in relation to other people. And in some cases, it can be unhealthy. And so when we talk about in psychology, like unhealthy personality traits, like the narcissism, histrionic,
Hmm.
people who are borderline, who really don't function in a way that is thinking of others. It's like me, what can I get? Emotionally manipulating people, being very self-centered. So those are probably when I'm thinking about the negative parts of, when we
Hmm.
talk about personality versus just, this is who I am because this has shaped me. Now, it sounds like for you, that's probably a reaction that you have. It's, not necessarily unhealthy. It's a protect. It's like that. We call it healthy paranoia, right? Like, yeah, that makes sense. You're going to be a little bit gun shy about men who have shown themselves not to be trustworthy. That is more of a defense mechanism. Like you're protecting yourself, and brings you a sense of safety. And when does that become toxic, right? So if it's like, okay, I can never be friends with men because I don't trust any of you, right? That's going too far. But it's like,
Right.
if I'm watching your behavior, or behavior is inconsistent, then and I'm making a decision based on something you've done. Now maybe I'm a little quick with it because of my own traumas, right? Then I think that's different. I think so. Exploring like what is the response? Is it going to a point of all or none, black or white thinking? Every time this happens, right? And you're not working on that. You're not trying to say like, hey, maybe I'm being premature and judging this person. Maybe this has something to do with my. Are you reflecting on it? Versus like, up, nope, next, move on to the next thing, and not really understanding why, or being more analytical about what those dynamics are happening. Because I have people a lot of times, and I work with women a lot of mostly. So, sometimes it's the choosing the same type of relationship, and they are so quick to blame their partners, and I'm like, no, you keep choosing this, right? You're the common denominator here. And the only thing you
That's
have
so
control
hard
over
to
is
accept,
yourself.
man.
It's so hard. And it is. It is. But it's like, and yes, you can blame their behavior. Oh, they were this way or they were that way. And those things may be true, but it's like, why are you attracting those type of people? Why are you engaging with them? What is it? What does that bring for you? What does that remind you of? Just digging a little deeper into those patterns, and then trying to reset. So it's like, so you can see the good in people, and you're not missing it because your trauma has kind of made you just cut off immediately certain types of people. And then ironically, sometimes we're like we were talking about earlier, then sometimes you're still drawn to those kind of unhealthy people. So it's not a perfect thing. Those underlying drives and things are not always in our conscious. So, you can't always, I tell people like, this is why it's important to be analytical because it may not be obvious, as to your why, what's behind it. And, I think having conversations, with your loved ones, with your friends, with your therapists, etc., can help you figure out those patterns and those whys. And, what do you want to do? What do you want to change
Mm.
going forward? I think that's how you handle it in a healthy way versus just having a strict, hard, fast rule that comes from your trauma that doesn't really serve you
This is
anymore
true.
now that
Mhm.
you're an adult, you're safe, you have choices, you have free will. And I think that's part of the work that some people don't want to do because all these things are uncomfortable. Like people are just like, let me just be, I'm just gonna be who I am. And they don't want to do the work. But I think if we want to grow, we want to be better, I think this is some of the difficult work that's important for us to do.
You made me think about boundaries. What's a healthy boundary? What does it look like?
Yeah. Well, that's one of my favorite things. So people misconstrue it. People think boundaries are about what other people will and won't do to you. And boundaries are really about you and what you will and won't accept, right? And I think healthy boundaries are making sure that people don't violate you in terms of your rights, who you are as a person, your values, your health, right? Those are important things for you to protect. You have to be able to not prioritize everyone else's needs and feelings and wants. Yours are just as valid. And so boundaries are, when you do this, I am not going to, right? So it's my response to that, right? If you choose to cause conflict at this family function, I will not be attending family functions, right? It's not about controlling their behavior. It's like, this is what I'm going to do in response because the only thing I have control over is myself, you know? And then it's like two different degrees, right? So there's a whole spectrum of that. It's like some of it's just like, I'm not going to engage in this conversation. It might be silence. It might be removing yourself. It might be distance, and then it might be, you have to get cut off because you can't respect my boundaries. And so we have to be estranged because you're not respecting my limits, right? And I'm not going to continue to overextend myself and, let down my values and sacrifice my emotional health for another person. And that's not always easy. And that's why I say there's the whole spectrum thing of it. But it's about protecting yourself and taking care of yourself. And so whatever that looks like. So even in work, like I've worked
Mm.
boundaries. I'm like, at work, it's like, okay, can you do this? I'm like, does this benefit me in terms of my career? Does it benefit me financially? Can someone else do it? And I had like it took me a while. I had this decision tree of like, yes or no. Like, how do I get to, when I'm deciding whether to take on something new? And it's like, there has to be something that is, beneficial if it's not a part of my designated job, obviously. But, and so having boundaries about, no, that's not something I have to be the one to do. Um, and so, yeah, I'm kind of known for that. Like I'm like, nope, here's the boundary. and, and it's like, it's almost unapologetic. Like I'm not over explaining. I'm not trying to justify. I'm not, trying to educate everyone about my boundaries. It's just like once I've got to again that decision, that's just what it is, and it's not this emotional. I have to explain it. You're violating my boundary. It's not all of that. It's just this is what I do every time you do this. This is what I do. It's just consistent, and that takes practice because there are a lot of other pulls on you. Oh, that's your family. Oh, that's and it's not always just easy. So I don't mean to say that. Although for some people, because my uncle was telling me the other day, he was like, "Oh, I can just, cut people off," and I'm like, and he's like, "You can too." I was like, "No, it's like I toil with it a lot before I get to, before I get, but if I get there, like you've earned it. Like if I get there, like trust me, it was a very much very well thought through things. So, there are different ways and. I think that, we have to make room for people learning and practicing boundaries. That's not, it's not difficult. People don't like change. People don't like, oh, you're going to respond to me differently. Oh, I
Mm.
can't get under your skin because you're not responding. You're just gray rocking me, right? You're just giving me nothing. So they're going to try to go around the boundary. And if you're not ready, then your boundaries are going to break because you weren't ready for the next thing they're going to try to sort of try to reenact that unhealthy dynamic that you have. They're going to try to figure out a way. So it's not like people are like not responding doesn't work. I'm like, yes, it does if you continue to not respond, right? But if you give in because you're frustrated because they picked at you from another angle, then yeah, that's when it doesn't work. And so, it's again practice, right? It's conditioning. It's, you know, um, saying, hey, this is the new way I'm doing things, or the new way I'm not doing things, and practicing that.
How can someone maintain compassion without enabling unhealthy behavior?
I love that question, Steve. I always say there are explanations and they're not justifications, right? So
Okay.
we can have compassion is understanding a person's why, understanding what they went through, understanding, their childhood, or they had having going through something stressful in life. That's the compassion part. But that doesn't mean the person gets to treat you however they want to treat you. That's the line, right? Because again, we're talking about those boundaries. Like you're sacrificing yourself and hey, heck, your own childhood and your own stressors and your own to set aside to overly identify and sort of bypass. And I think that's one of my challenges. Like people always are quick to bypass, like the harm someone has caused. Like, well, it's because, and that's great. It's great to understand. I mean, that's part of what we do. It's like we try want to understand why, but we have to keep going in that, right? It's like, that does not give you a right to treat someone in an unhealthy way, in an abusive way, in all those negative things. It does not excuse that. And it doesn't excuse the harm, right? So you still have the outcome,
Right.
even if, oh, I understand why you were, not a good person in this relationship. I understand why you cheated all the time because your dad was a cheater, right? Okay, but you still cheated. It still hurts you. Your feelings are still, right? But if you're thinking like, well, that's just how they are, and they've got it, they've got to work on it, and you're thinking you're gonna maybe be their therapist through the relationship, so they will stop being a cheater, versus accepting, and I call it like radical acceptance of like who people are. Like you are not their therapist unless you are, but you're not their therapist. And so not doing the work for them to, overly emphasize, things that have happened to them, things that they've gone through, to justify their behavior. It's I think it's an important line. Like I think that's a piece of it. Is that you can and should, I think, understand other people's why. But I think that's the part of the emotional intelligence. It's like there's two parts. Like if people are not willing to be aware of their why and to change it and manage it, other people aren't going to be able to do that for them. So, what good is it for you to understand their why and then now you're doing the work for them to try to like they're not. I said I'm not going to work harder than you on yourself. So I
Right.
I think it's
Right.
it's like a compassion and like pause. Like yes, I understand. And maybe if you're someone who is willing and I can say like, hey, this seems to be coming from XYZ. Maybe they weren't aware because sometimes we had blinders on. We didn't
Yeah.
know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're a person like, wow, I hadn't thought about that. Man, you sit with that. Maybe think about like that is the that is the work that you want them to do, right? And those are people you can be in relationship with, right? There's other people who will use it and try to elevate and maybe overstate their experiences of trauma to try to manipulate you into feeling bad for them. And again, losing focus on yourself and your needs and your boundaries and your values and like losing sight of yourself because you rush into that caretaker mode again, trying to understand and fix what they're going through. So I say everybody has to go to their corner and do their own work, and you can help each other to
Yeah.
a degree, but people have to do their own work. And you can't do that work for somebody else by, making their experiences bigger and giving them excuses for how and who they are. You really need to hold them accountable and let them sit with that while you work on your own stuff over on the other side. So,
Does forgiveness require reconciliation?
oh, Steve, I love that. Okay, so I was just on a panel at Mount Rubidoux Church. I think 3 weeks ago we were talking about that, and that has been my struggle. Like, this is why I wrote the book because I think for me, like I ended up with my grandparents in the church through them. They really brought home that I had to be in relation with my mother, right? It's like the forgiveness means that that person is in your life, right? And I struggled with that because I was just like years and years and decades of like, this is just this hamster wheel of dysfunction that is hurtful, that I can't even heal from because it keeps happening over and over again. And I really had to lean into what does this look like? So from a scriptural standpoint, it says that we have to forgive. It doesn't say that we have to stay in relation with those people, right? I haven't found that. Maybe, and Steve, you're a Bible scholar, so I know.
No,
I
no,
know.
scholar.
You can correct me. Please do. But it doesn't say that. It says forgive. And I would find myself in these games like when it says like the ones like forgive 70 times seven or something like, okay, that's 490 times. I found
Yeah.
myself like tallying how many times I
Oh
had been
no.
like injured to try to justify, like, can I now, is it okay now for me to say this is enough? Like, what is the number? How much can one tolerate? And so I don't think that it is healthy to send people back into toxic, unhealthy relationships, right? I think we have to do a better job of taking care of people who have been harmed, whether it be by their partner, whether it be by their loved ones, whether it be someone in their community, in aligning with the victims, right? Aligning with those that have been abused and having empathy for them. Like we're so quick to protect and try to, restore and try to, oh, we're going to forgive, right? But like forgive doesn't say forget. And forgive doesn't mean that you still get to be in relationship with me any longer, right? And actually for me, it helps me stay in a place of forgiveness because I'm not constantly being harmed over and over again. And so I think we have to rethink what that means and what we're advising people, especially when it comes to people's physical safety, when it comes to their emotional safety. And we've got to stop pushing people back into unhealthy relationships, whether it be the family pressure, the community pressure, religious pressure, societal pressure. Like, we've got to stop, promoting reconciliation when one party has done no work. We always put it on the victim to like, oh, reconcile, and it's like you were actually injured in this. So, I think the onus is really on the perpetrators of abuse. I think we just need to be more conscious that of the impact of, you know, not even just physical abuse, but emotional abuse and
Mhm.
neglect and all those things, and not um it's almost like a shortcut. And we do this too. I think like I'll just quickly talk about especially with like maternal relationships. We're so
Mhm.
quick to like, oh yeah, she never showed up to me, but she, always bought me shoes. It's like that. Like you can't even sit with the pain of the person not being there, not showing up for you in life. And you like so quickly move to the being the provider. And I say, well, it's the law. They have to feed you. They have to shelter you. That's the law.
Right.
So like you don't get parent bonus points for feeding your kids, right? That's what you're supposed to do. And so I think we are so uncomfortable with sitting with the harm that people have caused that we do it with ourselves, where we quickly move on to like the redemption story, that redemption arc. Right? We got to have their why. Well, why were they like that? Why did they do that? And oh, and that may be fine and true, but like you're neglected. How is that hurting you now? How's that informing your choices now? How's that impacting your life today? And we just got to be more careful with how we handle um, relationships and just be more empathetic to the people who are the survivors, and not forcing them to forget about their feelings and engage in the model of forgiveness that works for you, or that it what it looks like for you. And that's really hard to do because you kind of feel like you're on an island by yourself. Like I can't do it. I have to, I don't know, I'll figure it out when the time comes, but I can't.
I,
I can't do your version of forgiveness and keep my sanity, and just being settled about that. And it is difficult. I mean, I would say I toiled with that probably 20 years. So I would say that's not an easy process. And I think it's one of those things that you really do need support, I think both spiritually and psychologically, because if you've kind of been raised in that context, it's difficult to disentangle, what does it actually say? And, am I following my beliefs, and, or am I misinterpreting something? And how is this affecting me psychologically with my therapist? How's it affecting my mood and all those things? And so, it's a lot of work, and I know I'm like asking people to do a whole, a whole lot of homework, but I think if you're interested in personal growth and and becoming a better person. Like I think that's the deep work of this is really sitting with the pain and not kind of going to the reasons and excuses and the forgiveness.
I used to carry this guilt for years, and it started to overtake me so much pertaining to not having a relationship with my father. At one time after a speaking engagement, and it just it was like this Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein didn't have a name for the monster,
Mm,
and but it was killing him. So, the
hmm.
whole metaphor with that. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
the one of my counselors, they heard me after my speaking engagement. And I welcome, I love feedback. I love because I'm that guy trying to improve, And he said to me, he said, what if the only purpose your father served was to bring you into this life? And then he paused, just let me think about it. So as I cogitated, meditated, and reflected in that moment, which felt like an eternity, he said he fulfilled his purpose, release him. And I was like, okay. So that helped
Hmm.
me to begin the process of not trying to pursue a relationship that wasn't healthy.
Yeah,
It I had never heard that. And I was like, okay.
yeah.
Now it's not what I wanted to hear, Bridget.
Yeah, it's not.
I didn't want to
No.
hear I didn't want to hear it.
No,
I
I don't
wanted to
hear
be
that.
just like
Mm-mm.
the other person who had a dad who
Yes.
I
And they
wanted
reconciled
I
and it
wanted
worked
it.
out. It's
It
that
didn't
hope.
happen.
It's that hope. Yeah, you almost have to abandon hope, and that's hard. You
That's
have
the
to
part.
abandon hope
I had to
that that
abandon
person
the
can
hope.
change, that you're going to have this relationship, this imaginary relationship down the road. You have to sometimes fully accept that some people cannot.
Man, I
That's back to
couldn't.
that radical acceptance. Some
The
people
radical
cannot.
accept. Man, now I'm glad you said that because I'm like, wow, I just have to in this advanced age that I am in.
Yeah.
I said, man, this is just the journey.
Hmm.
And another counselor told me, said, yeah, they were just honest with me. This is why I love psychologists. He said, he just said, it'll never change, Stephen.
Hmm. Yeah.
This is your
That was the for me, that was the I don't know, did you get that feeling in your gut? Like it's just like, oh, like it's this like, I don't know, this where everything's been uneasy and and you're toiling and it's just like, wow, that is real. This
It's
person
real.
is at this big age, older than me. They have not done any work. You know, they may do performative things, right? They may pretend to be a better person in different
Oh
ways, but
man.
at their core,
Yeah.
they're doing the same thing. They're still the same. And waiting around for them to change, waiting around for them to love you, is letting go of that is difficult, but it's also like, I don't know, there's some comfort I find in that of, not just holding on. Because I think some people, they may be staying in that place, like they're like, they accept it, but it's temporary, you know? Like I have people who in my family, like, sometimes like they know all the stuff, but then they forget. And then they like go back in and they're like, why did I? I'm like, because you let go of that radical acceptance. You fell back into hope, that of what it could be, but some people are not capable. And that's when we talk about those persistent things, whether it's their personality disorder, whether it is substance use, whether it is mental illness, whether it is extreme emotional
Right.
immaturity.
There's a
Some
lot.
people
Right.
do not have the capacity to change. And you are not going to be able to fix something. Like me, I'm like, I'm a psychologist. I can help. I should be, of all people, I should be able to. Bridget, stop. Like, one, that's not your job. And two, it's not going to work. Right? I am not going to heal people as much as I want to, as much as I want them to understand. If it's like, oh, all I got to do is this thing, it's not. Some people cannot change who they are, and and that's sad. and it's probably something we can't relate to as people who try to grow and change all the time. Be like, wait, where's my blind spots? I'm going to work on this and that. It's probably
Right.
difficult for us to relate that, well, no, with age, they're going to get better. Oh, they're in the church now, they're going to get better. Oh, they're, saying they're going to therapy now, and it's like they're still doing the same things because none of that is genuine. They're not actually doing genuine work. It's that sometimes that performance, and that performance always gives us hope, and it reels us back in. But it's like at some point we really have to accept, who people are, and stop waiting for change that is never going to come.
Rapid fire questions, real quick. Complete
Okay.
the sentence. A healthy relationship always. Don't think
Involves
about it.
two people. Involves two people.
The,
It takes
the,
two people.
okay, the hardest word for many people to say is
No.
the most underrated relationship skill is
Self-reflection.
one myth about love is
It looks the same all the time.
one myth about boundaries is
It's about other people's behavior.
people become emotionally healthier when
I'm back to the self-reflection. Self-reflection, when they engage in self-reflection.
a question everyone should ask themselves before entering a relationship is,
Who am I?
hmm, man, that's right. That is right. Who am I? Bridget, man, I thank you so much for taking the time to educate, even heal me in this process. I was like,
You're
oh yeah, that's
welcome.
me. Oh yeah, thank you. That's a yeah. But you know what? You share so many what I call cues for living a great life. Practice, put in the work, set the boundaries, be aware. This has been fantastic. So I got to ask you. So you've written a book.
Yes.
Just share a little bit about it if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah. My book came out with Wiley this past December. It's a little different. So most of the time, psychologists are talking about things from the technical side, or other people are writing books from their lived experiences. And my book is a combination of both. So it's very different. I talk about my own stories. I talk about other cases of people who have survived adverse childhood experiences. So experiences of abuse, neglect, or household dysfunction, and how it affects our lives, and really hopefully giving a blueprint for how to overcome that, because we know that it has a severe impact on your health and your physical health and your mental health, your parenting, and all of the things. And so, using my life as an example of the work that I've done to really recover from a dysfunctional maternal mother-daughter relationship. So it's a vulnerable work. It's the psychology
Mm,
sprinkled in there, so it's
yeah.
educational and digestible. And there's a lot of resources in the back for, learning more about adverse childhood experiences, and working through like steps to understand yourself and where you come from and how that's affecting you as an adult. So it's been a lifelong dream of mine to do and a passion project. And I'm so glad it's out. And hopefully it's a helpful resource for people who have had similar childhoods.
How can the audience follow you? What's your social media handle?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram and TikTok at Ask Dr. Bridge. So it's DR, not so Ask Dr. Bridge. They can find me there and talk a lot more about dysfunctional families. I'm also on Psychology Today as a regular contributor, and my blog is called When Families Hurt, and so I focus on biweekly anecdotes around different kinds of dysfunction and different ways families uh, harm us, and focus on helping people overcome that. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Steve. This was really fun. Appreciate it. Good conversation today.
Yeah, I enjoyed every minute of it.